vehicles, and I just about.
Good evening, everybody. We'll go ahead and call to order the regular meeting of the Solid Waste Authority, September 24th, 2013. Before we get started tonight, I'd like to take just a moment to recognize the recent passing of General James Vault, who was a board member out here and a very dedicated member of our community and served in a lot of different capacities. So we lost a great great American and somebody that served the country and served our community. If we would, let's bow our heads for a moment of prayer, please. Our Heavenly Father, thank you for all the many rich blessings you bestowed upon us. Please forgive us for our sins. We know there are many. Guide us and protect us and help us make good decisions for the citizens of Horry County. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Ms. Creech.
If you would please, before y'all stand, General Vault was a friend of mine, and for just a second, I wanted to say a lot of times people get a moment of silence, and he was very opinionated. I'm not sure he'd want that. And I talked with him one time when my father passed away. I was given a flag that was folded, and unfortunately, I tried to refold that thing and put it in a wooden thing, and I couldn't quite do that again. And we talked about that, and he asked me if I knew why the flag was folded 13 times. So if you will give me a moment, I would like to tell everyone that in honor of him, because it means a lot to us, but I think that was really the meaning of his life. And it's always meant more to me to pledge allegiance after he told me what that meant. I didn't know it. So real quickly, I'm just going to do that, why the American flag is folded 13 times. The first fold is a symbol of life. The second is a symbol of our belief in eternal life. The third fold is made in honor and remembrance of the veterans departing our ranks that gave their life in defense of their country. The fourth fold represents our weaker nature for as American citizens, trusting it is to God we turn in times of peace and war for divine guidance. The fifth fold is a tribute to our country. May she always be right in dealing with other countries, but even if she may be wrong, she is our country. The sixth fold is where our hearts lie. With our hearts, we pledge allegiance to the flag. The seventh is a tribute to our armed forces, for through them we protect our country. The eighth is a tribute to the one who entered into the valley of the shadow of death that we might see the light of day. The ninth is a tribute to womanhood, for through their faith and devotion and loyalty that the character of the men and women who have made this country great has been molded. The 10th is a tribute to the fathers, for he too has given his sons and daughters for defense of their country. The 11th, in the eyes of the Hebrew citizen, represents the lower portion of the seal of King David and King Solomon and glorifies the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The 12th, in the eyes of the Christian citizen, it represents an emblem of eternity and glorifies God, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. And the 13th, when the flag is folded and the stars are uppermost, reminding us of our nation's motto, "In God we trust." And that when it is finished and tucked, it as worn by George Washington and Captain John Paul Jones, it resembles a cocked hat, which reminds us of the armed forces of the United States, preserving the rights, privileges, and freedoms we enjoy today. And with that, if you'll stand.
Thank you for sharing that.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Ms. Murphy, have all the proper notices been sent about tonight's meeting? Yes. Thank you very much. I'd like to also welcome members of County Council, Chairman Lazarus, Councilman Prince, Councilman Loftus that are here with us. Thank y'all for being here tonight. First order of business, the approval of the agenda. We have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. And the approval of the minutes from the last meeting, August 27th, 2013.
So moved. Second.
Motion is second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. We have no requests for public input. We'll move right into the departmental reports. Ms. Murphy.
Good evening.
Hello.
Good evening.
My report begins on page 1. Want to give you a brief update on the South Carolina DHEC Annual Progress Report. As you know, the South Carolina Solid Waste Management Act requires that each county complete a report of the municipal solid waste recycled within its municipalities. Each local government, municipalities, and the county has to report this information. Solid Waste Authority staff completes this report annually, and we also contact any businesses within Horry County that are doing any type of recycling. Businesses are not required to report that particular information. They are encouraged to do so. We began this process on July 29th because it is a fiscal year report. We're reporting for fiscal year 13. The progress began on July 29th. We contacted approximately 137 businesses. And in your board packet, there's a breakdown of the responses we received as of the date we had to complete. DHEC gave us a September 13th date to have the report completed and submitted to them. So of the 137 that we contacted, 70 surveys were completed and returned to the Solid Waste Authority for us to incorporate as a part of the overall report. 22 businesses or municipalities completed their report online directly through DHEC because that is an option that they have. Of the group that we contacted last year, 5 of those who we contacted this year are no longer doing any recycling inside of Horry County. And of our 137, we did not receive any response, nor had DHEC at the time of this report being written. They hadn't received a response from the 40 that remain. Usually in the springtime is when they finish their overall state report, and at that point in time, we'll find out what the recycling rates and things of that nature are for Horry County for fiscal year 13. The next item I'd like to review with you is our annual United Way campaign. We began our campaign as pace setters this year in August. We held 3 departmental meetings and then sent out pledge requests to others who could not attend those meetings. We also participated in the United Way Day of Caring on September 13th. In your packet and on the screen are pictures of Team SWA, and I do want to do a special thanks to our team members, Mr. Rodney Cannon, Miss Cindy Keith, Miss Sherry Starks, Mr. Mike Besant, and myself. We all went out to the Myrtle Beach Haven House to assist with some maintenance and repair to their playground. Thankfully, it wasn't really hot that day, so we had a fairly good day to be working outside. The paint color was green, so we all loved that, so that worked out well. And the people at the Myrtle Beach Haven House were very thankful for the efforts that were being made by the United Way and through our assistance. So we want to thank everybody for their participation. We did set a goal this year of $5,900 as our Solid Waste Authority goal. To date, we're at $5,400. And y'all know me, I'll take money till December 31st. So if you have pledges you'd like to give, I'm here till y'all leave tonight. So
Thought maybe the board could level that thing out tonight.
I second.
Round
The last update I want to give you is just an update on some dates and some events that we have upcoming. These dates are going to carry us through the end of the calendar year. This weekend we'll be with Mr. Blayton and the crew from North Myrtle Beach up at the Irish Italian Festival. This is one of our favorites to go to because it is so well attended, and there's a good time had by all. Next month, we do have an open house scheduled for October the 11th. Encourage you all to come out if you can. There's a Solid Waste and Recycling Professionals Conference on October 22nd and 23rd. It's going to be held in Columbia. That's an annual conference that's held for local government recycling and solid waste professionals, and gives you a chance to get some updates on what's going on the state level and do some real good contact county to county. Our annual employee banquet, employee dinner, is scheduled for November the 1st. That's Friday, November the 1st. We will determine the location and let you know that at the next board meeting, but I do want you to go ahead and mark that date. And the last date I really want you to kind of make sure you get in your calendar is our December board meeting. That meeting is the one meeting that does fluctuate depending upon the holidays. And when we developed our schedule of meetings this year, the date of December 12th was selected for the December board meeting. You have any questions? No? Wonderful.
No questions, Ms. Murphy? Thank you very much. Mr. Hilling, Operations and Planning.
Good evening to you. Some of our operations and planning updates on our projects. First one is the saddle area closure and the new access road. Last week, King started grading and trying to get it finally tuned out there. Today, they started doing their clay test pad, and it should complete that by tomorrow. Hopefully have the results by the end of the week, and it's scheduled to start going full steam ahead to start bringing the clay in, and each 6-inch lift will be tested and all. We'll have 2 feet of clay out there, so it'll be full steam ahead. Hopefully come Monday, everything's looking really good now and they're ready to go. So their plan is about 3 weeks to have all that clay in here, and hopefully everything will mesh out real well for them. Secondly is our property updates out there. As I've mentioned in a couple of our past board meetings, of course this relates to our next 2 projects, but it's been a challenging year for us with the amount of rain that we've had out there. You know, I've mentioned we've had close to 40 inches of rain out here from May through August, and most the SWA conference we went to, most of the other landfills and people had that same type of challenges ahead of them. But it's been extremely interesting to try to keep the landfill mowed during that time, because we get a section mowed and it rained and we had to stop. But we've pretty much finally completed our last section of mowing out there, which included tracks D and E, where we'll be relocating the grinding area and where we get our bar soils from. We finally mobilized over to the A2 or 1187 property. We've been over there for about a week. We've got about another week and a half trying to get around the ponds and all the pines out there and finish the last big storm debris site in the back out there. But I was out there today. It's looking very well out there, and you know, hopefully that's going to hold us for the year. But again, it's taken a little longer to do it. So much rain, and the vegetation out there is just so thick, so it's a little bit slower going. But it's looking really good out there, real good. Along with that, our landfill inspection. You know, we went for months and months, and we didn't stump our toe or have a bump in the road, but with the amount of rain we had in July and August, again, it was very trying out there. As you can see on my report, in July we had over 9 inches of rain, and we got a 2A, which is very minor on C and D, just some of our short-term cover. It was constantly, we'd get a heavy downpour, we'd go back and cover it again, and I mean, y'all saw the rain. We all lived it for 4 months out here, and we thought this was Seattle, South Carolina, instead of Conway, but we kept after it. We'd fill it in, and but we did get a 2A, and then the same thing in August, where we had over 10 inches of rain on the landfill, which again, that's a tough one right there to try to keep things going. And when the inspector came in, we got a 2A on the C and D and the solid waste, which again, just minor. A little bit of our short-term cover had washed off. She waited about 10 days and came back in, dry weather. I mean, it's been one extreme or another. Dry weather came in here, and she came back in, and it was all ones out there. So We just need a little cooperation from Mother Nature to help us out a little bit out there, but I think we're back on track. But again, the rain was, it was really tough, and especially on the slopes out there. But it was not for lack of effort, I can assure you that. The fellows, they really busted it. And lastly, our driver of the month, just to catch that up, July, we had Larry Davis from Easy Dump was our nominated driver, and for August, it was Brian Gore from Waste Management. So we continue to do that each month, and you know, it's a good program out there. So, any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Hilling.
Thank you.
Ms. Crump, Finance and Administration.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
The financial reports start on page 20 in your board package. The tipping fee revenues for the period ending August through August 31st were down about 2% for the month of August, and year-to-date for the first 2 months of the fiscal year, we're up 1.4%. So in looking at all of the two major materials, solid waste is at 23.5% of budget for the year, and mixed construction is just a little bit over 17%. So we're right on track. Recyclable sales, we've had a total of $473,000 in sales the first 2 months, which equates to 15% of our budget. In the C&D recycling facility area over here, about 12% of the C&D trucks coming in are going to the factory, and we're maintaining our 68% recycling rate. So, on page 22 is the income statement for the month of August. You'll see that the net income for the month was $6,000. Year-to-date, we're at $494,000. The total revenues for the year so far are at about 17%, with the expenses running about 14 3/4. So we're maintaining that 2.5% to 3% spread between revenues and expenses. If you turn over to page 25, I wanted to talk for just a minute on the chart on page 25. It's the estimated landfill liabilities. I just wanted to kind of briefly go over and make sure we're all up to speed what this actually means. The first column, the yellow column, is the estimated total liabilities, and that's from a third-party estimate that those come from. And that goes all the way out to the end of this landfill at this footprint. The designated cash area is the money that we've actually put aside for each of these. As you remember, for every ton that comes into the landfill, we put a certain amount aside for closure, post-closure, and future construction from that ton. I think what's important to remember is that as we build a cell and we go into that cell, we don't have any liability for that cell until we put the first ton of garbage into that cell. At that point, we become liable for the entire closure and post-closure of that cell. But we don't really have the money put aside for that closure and post-closure until we put the last ton of garbage in it. That's how it's set up. So at any given point during using that cell up, if we had to close for whatever reason, we would not have the money for that cell put aside. Now, that's not to say, that we wouldn't, if we were closing the doors, obviously there'd be other things going on and you'd have to come up with the money, but that's the way the process is set up. So when you look at this chart, that's what I want you to see. Right now at this point, we're at about we're a little bit less than 25% funded for what we think we're going to need all the way through this footprint.
Ms. Crump, how often are those numbers updated to make sure that we're on schedule and having the designated funds necessary?
The liabilities are updated every year. The engineer, we're required as part of our audit to have a engineer's letter, and they go in and review that. If you remember, in about a year ago this time, we also had another third party come in and check that engineer's work. They found that we were a little bit short in their opinion. But he looks at them every year, and they're based on what he reviews as the cost based on the most current closure projects that are going on of the same type. Obviously, it's an estimate. Things change, technology changes. Several things can impact it. So, but that's what we're basing. And then we look at every year at the same time at budget time, how much we're putting aside to make sure that we have the money we're supposed to have and need to have to close that and maintain the post-closure on it.
Thank you. Ms. Creech?
Is this information on the website?
Well, this board package is on the website, and it's in the board package, but I don't think it's not separate on the website, if that's what you mean. We could certainly put it on there.
Okay, but so it is available for anybody to read the studies and
the
whatever
pack.
engineers and everybody has, and where they got their information?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
One other thing that I wanted to mention, one last thing, was that the finance department had been instructed, because of some of the things that are going on now and the potential of C&D being taken out of the flow control ordinance, we're instructed to go back and look at the most recent figures and update any information, and use any updated information we had to basically determine what we think we might have to be adjusting. In doing so, we looked at last year's tonnage that came in. We looked at, considered only four customers, because we took a very, very conservative approach, and it was the four customers that we really thought we would probably lose the tonnage. Obviously, there may be a whole lot more. And based on what they did last year, and based on our projections for this year, we determined that we estimate close to 35,000 tons is what we'll lose in C&D. Now, that's probably going to need to be lowered a little bit, because it depends on when it would go into effect. But that would average out to $900,000 a year, about between $72,000 and $75,000 a month. And what we talked about at staff meeting today is that we would have to monitor this monthly, and when it started impacting us, then we would have our cut list out and be looking at it and come back to you and determine what we needed to do. So just want you to know that we are looking at that, so that we be prepared.
Mr. Gray?
The four customers, who are the four customers?
Easy Dump, Lee Disposal, Express Disposal, and Unlimited Sanitation.
Unlimited Sanitation is the company that contracts with the county through us.
But we didn't look at the county's portion of it. We looked at the commercial end. They also bring commercial loads in here.
Okay. And the assumption is that 100% of what they are now bringing in and have been bringing in would no longer be brought in?
That is what we base this on. But I think, and I understand where you're coming from, but I think you also can look at the fact that we didn't include anybody else. So, if they do bring some, I feel sure we will lose, especially in the beginning, some from some of the other C&D customers.
Another way of looking at that, though, is that those constitute most of the C&D that we receive from those four companies. That's why they were picked. It's also reasonable to assume that they would not cost themselves more to drive by. In other words, they'll continue to bring some of their C&D into this location simply because it's the most economical haul for them. Is that also a reasonable
I
assumption?
would think that would be a good business decision. We've had some pretty strong indication from them that if they didn't have to bring it here, they wouldn't be bringing it here. So, I don't know that I can answer that question any better than that.
Well, it depends on how you ask that question, but if it was more economical for them to bring it here than it would be to haul it somewhere else, then I guess they would say, well, we'll bring it here.
Maybe. Depends on what your ultimate motive is. I don't know that answer, Mr. Gray. Yes, I would say
I
it
think
would
a
be a
diff-
good business decision.
I think a different, every time you model something, it's based on projections. Projections are based on assumptions. And I think to assume that all of the waste collected by all four haulers would 100% go out of the county. I think another way of looking at that is that they would say, well, what's the most economical way for me to run my business? And when it means taking it to the closest landfill consistent with good pricing, they would take it there. So the outcome may be different than,
It's just an estimate, that's all it is.
Could not be
That's why
assured
we,
of that.
that's why we would monitor it monthly, so that we could see where it is going.
could not be assured that they're gonna take every bit of it out either.
No, you couldn't. I mean, that's just a human making a decision there. You just don't know.
All
It
I'm
may-
pointing out is that the assumption model is worst-case scenario, and that is that the haulers, for whatever reason that you've selected or that we've selected, will always take 100% of whatever they collect out of the county.
It is worst case where those four customers are concerned.
Thank you.
Mr. Jones?
Yeah, I don't know how you prepare for something other than preparing for the worst-case scenario. You don't prepare for it to go half bad, you prepare for it to go bad. And they are not the only four haulers that are not gonna bring things here. I think what Ms. Crumpet tried to do is do exactly what you're trying to do, and that's assume something, and I think she did that at the best of her ability. There's no guarantee that's gonna happen. If you're looking for her to answer a business question about another man's business, I don't think she's capable of that. But I think that is a fair estimate, considering the overall picture, which is an unanswerable question. It's a guesstimation.
Mr. Knight?
Mr. Gray and the board, what we've got to get ready for, and we've talked about this 3 or 4 years in our budget process, when the money quits coming across the scales, all we're getting staff ready to do is we've got to cut those expenses to meet the money. Worst case scenario, if it's half of this guess, then, but we have got to come in under the black. And that's all this exercise is doing. We're getting prepared for the worst case scenario if and when it happens. And that's all we're doing, is preparing to make sure we stay within our budget.
Ms. Creech?
I agree. In business, I always prepared for the worst one, so that's a good thing you did. And I guess this is just wondering, we charge $29 a ton. I don't know how many tons are on a truck. And if you add the gas of where it would be to take it, and you looked at it, if someone owned their own landfill and didn't pay a tipping fee, then it might be a lot cheaper for them to take it there than to pay the gas to transport so many tons on an axle. So I guess there are a lot of, having life been in statistics many years, there are a lot of pieces to that puzzle, and you never really know the answer until you have them all.
Right. There are a lot of unknowns, and I think the plan is to be prepared if, in fact, we need to make cuts, and if we don't need to, then hopefully it's a best-case scenario.
That's right.
Well, I would just like for it to, and I'll leave it at here. I understand Mr. Knight's point and everyone else's point. Let's just assume worst-case scenario and prepare ourselves for that. but that does not necessarily mean that that's the way it will happen.
Correct.
That there is another model which is somewhat less dire and less consequential.
Absolutely.
And we don't know yet which one is correct.
And that's why we're gonna monitor it monthly, if and when it happens, and then we'll know where we're standing and what we need to do.
Thank you.
And we do the same thing on the sale of the recyclables. We cannot control the recyclable amounts or the price that we're getting for them. We estimate it the best we can based on some past stuff, what we're hearing, is for sure, we can't manage China, and the whole United States is talking about China and the position they're taking on recycling. All we can hope for, if in fact we lose C&D, the recyclables go up and we can generate more stuff through the MRF to where we've got more stuff to sell to offset the loss of funding other places.
Any other questions?
Well, not about that, but if you're through, there were two other, are there any recyclables we're taking in that we're losing money on? At the moment?
Well, when you say losing money,
Not breaking even, if you can price.
you know, we basically lump all the revenue in.
Okay.
And so we look at it from that respect. And in that respect, we're as far as the MRF's concerned, you know, we are breaking even.
Okay. And the last question was, last meeting, the treasurer was here and talked with us about looking at some different options to, I was not real happy with the money we have and the amount of interest he was getting. So he was going to come and talk with the finance department. Has he been and talked with you?
He has been out, and we've talked about some things that we can do. He's getting us some information as far as credit card cost and so forth. And they're setting up, they were having a meeting last Friday with an individual that they're getting ready to set up to do some of their investments. And he's going to have him come out and meet with us after they get it all set up.
Okay.
So we are moving that way. We haven't made any changes yet, but we are moving that way.
Thank you.
Mr. Creech, what we will probably do, once we talk with him, then we'll request a finance committee meeting, and we can sit down and we can all talk
Okay.
about the possibilities, because just a little bit more in this field will help us in these other fields where we may fall short.
Okay?
Anything else, Ms. Crump? Any questions for Ms. Crump? Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Mr. Besant, Special Projects, Governmental Affairs.
For those of you that wants to enjoy me on your iPad, it's page 50.
He'll get paid
The
back.
C&D Recycling Incentive Program, as we normally report, Lee Disposal took in at his facility about 886 tons last month. He recycled 734 tons. At 82.83, he did do some grinding of some wood he had on site and got it off site last month, so that he has the sod place out of Gallups Ferry come in and grind it up, and they take it and turn it into mulch. And he normally stockpiles that, and he did some of that last month. Total incentive tons he got here at the landfill for incentive, he got a reduction was 327 tons, and he received a reduction in tipping fees of $1,637. His year-to-date numbers are he's took in 1,899 tons at his facility. He has his concrete that he recycled was 807. His total recycling tonnage was 1,180. As you can see, the concrete was at 807, which put him back to 34%. So he's recycling without concrete, even though his other was 62. It's about 50% of what he's been taking in is concrete. Total credits he's received is about 2,395. The reason I keep up with the concrete separately on all of these is because North Carolina actually took it out because they said it's a number that's kind of hard to do, and they reduced their number from 75% reduction required at these type of facilities to 30%. So it was easier to do. So that's, without the concrete, it's kind of hard to match that number. Next one is Easy Dump. They did 672 tons in their facility. They recycled 398 at 59%. They didn't receive any incentives because they've not been in the program for a while because they're not meeting the 75% requirement, and has received no reduction in tipping fees. His year-to-date numbers: 1,423 tons. Concrete, he's done 314. His year-to-date numbers for this year, for July and August, is 45%. With that concrete, he's back to 30%. And he's received no credits this year. Like I said, he's been out. I think he is working on some things to try to get that number back up, but he's going to have to, it's got to be up to 75% for a full quarter before he can get back into our incentive program. Okay. Just to give you a little update on all the recycling incentive programs. The MSW recycling for July and August, we gave $51,000 worth of incentives. The C&D recycling at the MRF over here was for people that went to our C&D factory, as it's called. And the companies that went in there did $5,000 worth of savings, and that utilize that facility. If they don't want to utilize it, they don't have to, but if they choose to. Our C&D recycling incentive at the designated facilities year-to-date is at $2,395 for a total of $58,483 year-to-date in customer savings has been issued back to customers in incentives. A couple things that we wanted to do, talk about the Association of Counties. They have issued their new website, and I've got it on here if some of you want to go to it. It is the don'tdumponsouthcarolina.com. And that is their new website, and they're going around the state, meeting with civic organizations and community meetings. I think they've got some down in Georgetown in the next couple of weeks, actually 1st of October. They've got down in Georgetown, they're going to be meeting with some people, and they'll be going throughout the state of South Carolina promoting this program and explaining why they are fighting against the flow control legislation at Capitol and how it affects counties. So they'll be doing all of that throughout the state, and they'll also be doing some here in Horry County and other counties throughout the state. Any questions? And then, of course, we all attended the Green Tie event. Some of us did. Let's see. I listed everybody, so I'll make sure I wouldn't miss nobody. The Green Tie event luncheon is the Conservation Voters of South Carolina luncheon, where they hand out awards to legislators and people throughout the state that is part of a Conservation Voters of South Carolina's organization. I think it's a real good meeting. A lot of legislators and senators and people from all over the state and members. Myself, Bo Ives, Ms. Creech, Ann Yeager, got that right, and Rodney Cannon, Esther, and Bill went to this luncheon. I thought it was a real good luncheon. So we participated in this last couple of years, and it's a good social event to attend. I know we've had some other board members in the past go, but we thought it was real well. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Bester. Mr. Knight, Director's Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First thing we're talking about is the public planning session, or the conservation public input meeting we had. I think it was well attended. We had 40+ attendees, had a lot of input, a lot of things that we really hadn't thought about, including into the proposed plan. We have advised DDC to proceed on with the input that we received for not a completed plan, but a plan that we can bring to the board to review in another public input type setting. We'll have it at a regular board meeting. We'll have, invite the public back to look at it and talk some more about it. Then we will be able to then take it to possibly county council in the league or any other place that we need to take it to kind of finish it up. And as was said in the meeting, it's never completed, finished up. It'll always be changing.
I apologize. For those of us that weren't at the meeting, can you just kind of relay some of the ideas and suggestions, recommendations, what the discussion was about potential uses?
Some of the discussions was tying the lake system together, and that would give kayaking a better opportunity. Dog park. Another issue was to work the fringe areas to keep wildfires from starting on our property and jumping across into the other properties. There was two members here with the bicycle group. They were very helpful in talking about their situations. There was some questions about the property and where it came from and how it was bought, but I think once we got past that the property was here, it had been purchased, and it would be a good idea to utilize it in the future, and some in maybe the near future, instead of once we close out. So I think the meeting was great, and maybe some of the board members that were here would like to speak to it also.
I do. What is the estimated cost of the plan?
Future plan?
Well, you said that DDC, who had some storyboards updated August 5th, I think. So I assume we haven't gotten a bill for that yet. But you said they'd been instructed to proceed with more.
They've been instructed to finish up what they're contracted to do. There'll be no more expenditures in this year's budget.
We had a contract with them before we started, right?
Yes.
How much is the contract?
Oh, I don't know right off what it was, but that was presented to the board. Board approved it and directed us to proceed on. I'll get that for you next board meeting. But everything you have seen on the check register is that's all there will be.
So far in the last year or so, it's been in the range, if I recall correctly, of $5,000, somewhere in that range. Is that what you think?
I think it's more than that's been paid, but we'll get that firm figure for you.
Okay, so you don't know whether it's 5,000 or 50,000 or 250,000. It's
I think it's more around 20, 25, high 20s, low 30s, something like that.
so maybe $25,000 or $30,000 we will have invested in this future planning for this park area, and some of it may be in use even sooner, I believe you said.
It could very well be, depending on who comes forward and who would like to utilize it. I think the bike folks have done a lot of work over on one of the conservation pieces of property. They very well may come to the board to say, we would like to do this, and we can do it in this format. And
Would they pay for it, or would we be?
We're not paying for it. We have tried to make that as clear as we can, is that we're not paying for all these facilities that will be placed here in the future.
Any developer that's coming in, he will pay for it.
Or any municipality, any city, any of the county, anybody that comes forward that would like to utilize it, there'll be an agreement struck with them on, safety insurance, stuff like that. But it's not our intention to build ballparks and fields. Never really has been.
So our total involvement will be at this point in time, somewhere in the range of, say, $25,000 for future planning.
That's right.
And if somebody else wants to come in on, execute on it now or at a future time, it'll be out of their pocket,
That's
not
right.
ours.
That's right.
Thank you.
Same situation happened when the county came to this board 5 or 6 years ago, wanting to utilize the property at 57, Highway 57. We agreed to it. They build it, they maintain it, and the debris site up there, they keep it cut, they play soccer on it. Even talking about, I think, putting a sprinkler system on it. But all that knowing that if we need it for a storm debris site, soccer's over, that we can get it cleaned up and cleared back into a way they can use it.
Ms. Creech, you have a question?
Yes, some of that money, I think was spent for engineering, environmental, looking at things on the landfill besides just,
No, we utilized DDC early on to, and Joe Brigman Company to do the delineation, the
Right.
new delineation.
okay,
And I think that's the reason this price was as low as it was the fact that they already had all the database and the maps and everything in place.
okay,
And this company had actually, when we bought the property, it was bought for a C&D landfill. And they already had those maps. And all those lifts for the C&D now is going to be lakes for dirt to utilize here.
right,
So a lot of that information was already in their database.
database.
And I think they've done, the guy that was working on it, I think he's done a real good program. He goes back now, we'll find a place for maybe the dog park, rename some of the trail, maybe a bicycle. And, you know, a trail can be used 3 times a week for 3 different situations. I don't think we'll ever get to motocross and motorized vehicles and 4-wheelers and stuff like that, by no means. But, you know, walking one day, bicycles one day. But that's what we're trying to do. Once the plan's put together, then we will have it. And then if people come and would like to utilize it, as we said in the meeting, once International Drive goes in, 5 minutes from this site, you could be at the ocean. So I think it's really going to open Highway 90 up. Okay, the next thing is the WasteCom conference. It was a neat conference. There's no place like home, though. But there's a lot of things. I still feel like we in probably the top 75% of the nation on what we do compared to what you hear about it at one of these national conventions. And what we're going to do is request all the white papers that was presented at this conference. We'll put them in a notebook, and anybody that wants to look through it and take a look at it, even from the staff, I promise the staff that they'd have an opportunity. But it's increasing efficiencies. Everybody's looking at efficiencies because of the money situation. Trash is going down, and everybody's got to take a look at that. We've now got iPads, and paper around here will go down. And that's newspapers and everything is more electronic now. Landfill gas system, leachate, natural treatment of leachate is getting big. One of the things it's talking about your operation is strength in people. We talk about your future workforce. And the guy was kind of funny, and he said, you know, the people today, their 401Ks are going to 101Ks. They're going to reverse mortgages. The kids mad because they're not going to get the house. And most of the kids are sitting in front of TV overweight. And he says, that's your future workforce. And it is really something to think about. Global solid waste issues. One guy made it plain that we're eating up 3 globes of stuff, and we got 1 globe that we're dealing with. Waste conversion, there's some real plants in Canada now. It's not tabletop models. It's not the ones that we've gone to look at. 3 or 4 different places about converting waste to some type of gas, energy, steam, and there's 3 or 4 ways of doing that, and it's places now that here and not in Israel and Australia that you can really go and see that that's being done. Solar development, of course, we've been talking about that on the next 30-acre closure that we're looking at. Mixed waste processing, politics of waste, and I told the guy I think I got a PhD in that. Plastics is one of the biggest problems you got now. Everybody's going to plastic. It's less weight, but that's one of the things that we have problems getting rid of. We call junk plastic, 5-gallon buckets and stuff like that. But flow control, we was actually one of the conversations in Long Beach. Flow
Case
control was a case study. Us in Houston, Texas, and 2 or 3 other places. And I won't go much into that. We've been there. Organic waste management. SWA has got a better website now where you can go on and get a lot of this stuff that they offer. And safety is in the future workplace. I mean, that's a big issue, and everybody's paying more attention to that in the construction and landfill businesses. The I&R committee meeting, update on that.
Before you leave that.
Yes, sir.
Say, Danny mentioned a white paper. I know that SWANA was the sponsoring organization for WasteCon and was also for the sponsoring organization for SWANA Quad, I think.
Yes, sir.
And also the one we had down at Fall Leafs earlier this year.
That's state.
State, yeah. And one of the things I found interesting, I know years ago when I would go to conferences, they would have people there and they would be making audio tapes, and for X amount of dollars you could buy audio tapes of the conferences you attended. Well, now these sponsoring organizations, they put on their website whatever, what do you call those presentations that people put together now?
PowerPoint.
iPad, yeah,
PowerPoint.
yeah, the PowerPoint presentation is so easily put on the company, the presenter's website and the sponsoring organization website. And I know, Danny, you and I sat beside each other when the lady from Smith and Gardner made her presentation about the 321 landfill in Lexington County. Well, you could go to SWANA's website for the Quad Conference or Smith and Gardner's website, and it was there. And it's not as good as going to the conferences because you don't get to talk to people face to face. But it's the next best thing. And I know when you go down the agenda items of things that you would particularly like to focus on, it's not like you miss everything because you didn't go to the conference. You can get the presentation as it was actually made simply by going to a website.
And that's what we'll be getting instead of
Right.
the white paper. It'll be the PowerPoints that were presented there, and we'll put them in one notebook, and then people can take a look at it and read them, and if we need more information on it, we'll certainly
Thank you.
get as much information as we can. Back to the INR committee meeting, the committee did approve our ability to go ahead and tape our meetings. And also, it was brought up that maybe the committee meetings also, so we can certainly do that also. Instead of having the committee meetings in the engineer conference room, we'll have them here because this is where the cameras are. The first meeting we had a little bit of problems with the sound, and now that's been corrected. And I think it looks good as long as and we got the whole staff trained on how to zoom in and zoom out and turn us on and off. So everything's going good there. The governance process, the committee received information, and that was what was done there. And the incentive program went to the full council meeting, and it was tabled 8-3. So that's my report.
Any questions for Mr. Knight? Thank you, Mr. Knight. Committee reports, there were no committees, so no reports. No old business. Under new business, if you'll turn over, there was a couple of emails that I just want to make a couple of comments about. Number one, and Mr. Gray and I have talked about this, it's no surprise, but I feel like there was some inaccuracies in the email where it was stated that nothing about the meeting in which the public was invited was mentioned at the last board meeting or previous board meetings. And I was at the last board meeting and at the previous board meetings, and I know it was. We talked about it. I personally made the comment to Mr. Knight that I was glad that the meeting was going to take place, and I was sorry that I wasn't going to be able to be here, but I was glad that the public was invited in. Mr. Gray, I mentioned to you as well that I was concerned about the derogatory and disrespectful tone I felt like that the email took on. And even if, in fact, the last board meeting you felt like you didn't understand that we had talked about that, I would have hoped that as a member of this board that you would have either at the meeting, at some subsequent meeting, or talked to Mr. Knight and expressed your concern in that fashion, rather than writing an email that, again, I felt like was in disrespectful tone. So I would just respectfully ask of you that in the future, in the spirit of harmonious productivity of this board, that we try to work together. This, to me, is detrimental to our working together, and I'm concerned by it and the tone that it took on, and I told you I'd bring it up, and certainly want you to have a chance to respond, and hopefully we can get this addressed and behind us and move forward productively as a board and work together.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, sir.
We did speak just before the meeting, and you did bring out most of those points. And I agree with you. One of the words I've learned from listening to the talking heads on television is the word impolitic. And I spoke impolitically. And I wish, if I could do it over again, that I would have made the point that I was trying to bring home in a much different way. In fact, I apologized to Mr. Knight at the INR meeting and told him that I was sorry the way that I spoke, and that I was sorry, and that I would apologize to him personally. That was in the coffee room of the INR meeting, so it only took, it was only a few minutes, and I will, Danny, and I apologize to the board for the words I used and the way I characterized a given point. I hope that attention will be paid to the second paragraph, which is the point that I was driving home, and not the impolitic way that I was getting to that point. I didn't come to talk about our shortcomings and my view about what's contained in the second paragraph. But if you would like for me to feel, hesitate to use reprimanded, but like I just need to do a better job of expressing myself. I feel that way, and I'm sorry.
I appreciate that. And one other thing, the second email, and I just want to get this on the table as well, there was, I think, a term used about collaboration with Miss Joan Smith, I think her name is. Smythe. Yeah, and I would just caution all the board about, without authority, making comments about potential collaboration with other outside groups. Obviously, she represents an engineering firm outside of the state and or outside of the city, outside of our community. And you know, obviously, that's something that as a board we would need to discuss and decide if, in fact, we wanted some sort of collaboration. And as an individual board member, let's just please be cautious about that.
Yes, that's good advice, and thank you for that. I would like to say that this was advertised as a public meeting, and we were asking people who thought they could provide input to developing this public park plan for our surplus lands to come. And in that regard, trying to discharge my duties as a board member, I went up and spoke to this lady. In fact, Danny and I were at the SWA conference when she made her presentation about a somewhat similar situation in Lexington County. By the way, this Smith Gardner firm does have a presence in South Carolina. In fact, Ms. Smythe had been involved with this project for 20 years, and they were able to take a failed landfill working with the Lexington County Public Works Department. It was so bad, it was on the Superfund. And I think they spent like $20 million just fixing the landfill. But they were able to get Mike, you referred to this earlier, they were able to get a driving range and a putt-putt and a practice facility for the University of South Carolina golf team. They must have plenty of money up there, but they put in a practice facility for them up there, and they paid for that.
University of South Carolina paid for it, right?
Yes.
Right.
And so in that, and you know, sometimes words have more than one meaning. Collaboration, I did not mean to imply that we were going to do business with her. What I was saying is that in my view, it's important for us as a board to collaborate and cooperate and have the private sector be involved with what we do, and we should ask their opinion and we should seek their advice. And I hope all of you this is Ms. Smythe's follow-up letter. It did not get in your packet, but she sent a follow-up letter addressed to myself and to Danny and to Mike Wooten, whose firm is making the public park plan. And all she says, I thank you for having me, and if there's anything that we can do to help you, to work with you in developing your plan, keep in mind that DDC is a private firm. I'd be glad to work with you. And that's all that was said, and I will be sure and make sure that to put a disclaimer on any invitation that I might extend to say, listen, I'm not asking you to do business with this board.
Right.
I don't have the authority to do that.
Mr. Gray, I was at the same presentation. I enjoyed her presentation as well and was very interested to see what they had done in Lexington County. And it's part of the reason why I thought it was a great idea that we were getting the public input. And she was certainly invited, just like everybody else. My only concern was the collaboration terminology that may have been misinterpreted by her as to thinking we were trying to solicit business from her firm. But that's my only concern about that one.
She made that clear in the follow-up.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good.
I would like to see, though, if we, the consultants, we got consultants here within our community that do a heck of a job. DDC, they do a great job. And if we can keep our business here with our local people, I'd like to see that done.
I agree.
Yeah.
That's why I asked that she work with Mike Wooten and DDC and not instead of them. And if you'll look at our check register, you'll find that we do have consultants that are local. We spend an awful lot of money with people that say engineering and environmental. We spend tens of millions of dollars, and they ain't in this state, much less this community.
No, I agree. You're right about that. But like I say, we do have
There's no
folks-
violation of
no
policy.
violation, but we would prefer if we could to keep our business local. Because we got, like a DDC, I'm sure he would contact Ms. Smythe if he thought it would benefit him.
I met for 2 hours this morning with Mike Wooten, who's a dear personal friend
Okay?
and a consultant to our golf course. You don't have to preach to me about Mike Wooten being a good engineer, and we should use Mike Wooten and Robert Castles and all the rest of them. I'm all for it.
Any other discussion, comments on the new business? Danny?
Mr. Gray, let me tell you this. I accept your apology.
Thank you.
I know when I went back and reviewed all the email wars and the meetings we've had and I think Mr. Thompson said you're very passionate on what you do. But I'm hoping some way or another I'll be able to kind of direct that passion to where we can all benefit from it.
You remember that phone call that you gave me 8 o'clock one morning?
I might if you were just.
I think the pot's calling the kettle black here.
You think?
I know so. So let's just work together.
Well,
You know we love, admire, and respect each other. We've been together a long time, and every now and then some words slip out that I know you wish you hadn't have said, and I hadn't have said. So, Buddy Rowe, you my friend. You'll always be my friend.
Well, I believe you have more slip out than I do, but I will accept your apology. And maybe you can put this apology in an email and send it to all them other people, because if someone picked up this email in California, they say, well, that guy out there must be crazy. He's going to get rid of 2,000 acres and didn't even tell anybody. But apologies accepted.
Thank you, Danny.
Did not
Campbell.
know that we were going to get rid of the 2,000 acres. I mean, absolutely not. Mr. Gray, that email was disrespectful to the board, to the staff. It was an embarrassment. It was mean-spirited and spiteful. It doesn't make me happy, that's for sure. And I can't see where a team member would write such a letter. And I'm hoping that down the road that you're going to change that.
Let me say this. You weren't here when this board sat around when it was about as mean and spiteful to me as they could possibly be, and I sat here and took it. So I think that works. Your solution works both ways, and also I agree. I've already apologized to certain words that I used, certain ways,
Sure.
and he's accepted it. But I think that we as board members need to keep a couple things in mind. We work for the people of Horry County and the elected officials, including the city council members that appoint us. We don't work for ourselves. And that we should be able to express our views. And even though our views may be different, that doesn't make us a disloyal member. Pam is going to say some things sometimes, or Northfleet, that may be discordant. And that doesn't mean that she or you might, or not being a loyal team member. It just means you're doing your job.
Mr. Jones?
Yes, I'd like to. Again, I'll accept your apology, Mr. Gray, but I'd like to remind you of something you said at this table and said, that you learned what sending emails would do, and you were through. You would never send another one, and I'll be glad to pull those minutes up if you'd like me to. And I'd just like to see that put back in place if we could. We can talk amongst each other. We don't have to go outside. If you want to vent, you can vent freely.
Well, as soon as you start inviting me to your Mount Vernon Mafia meetings, then maybe we can talk about, not sending out emails. But in the
Explain Mountain
meantime-
Run Mafia meetings.
In the meantime,
Explain Mountain Run Mafia meetings.
well, you explain my emails, and
I-
you don't need to be critiquing me, and I don't need to be critiquing you.
What
You just do your job.
You
as
just
see it
accused
as a
me of
board
something,
member,
Mr. Gray.
And I will do the same thing.
You just
Mr.
accused me of something. I'm simply asking you, not angrily, I'm simply asking you to explain to me what you meant by Mountain Run Mafia meeting.
Invite me to one of your meetings, and we'll have
What
talk.
meeting are you speaking of,
Just
Mr.
any
Gray?
of them that you have.
I don't know what meeting you're speaking of. If
then
you
don't
will
let-
tell me,
Don't pay it no mind.
Okay, let's get back on point, and let me just say, I agree with Mr. Gray. We work for the citizens of Horry County, and I think that we, in our own ways, all have the best interest of those citizens at heart. Sometimes we have different manners in going about the way we represent our citizens and neighbors. I just hope that we can continue to work together with respect for each other. And Mr. Gray, I only bring that up about, again, I felt like the tone was disrespectful of the email towards our director and towards the board. I think that we all have.
Apologize, he accepted the
Yes, sir.
apology.
Yes, sir.
You've said it now 3 times. Is that enough?
Well, I'm trying to say that I hope we can continue to work together.
The message.
Any further discussion about the emails or, Ms. Creech?
Being the odd woman out and the newest member of the board, I would just like to say, after all is said and done, we were all appointed here for the same reason, and I hope we'll all work toward that, because there's been a lot of stuff from Columbia and here, there, and everywhere that I've seen before I came to the board. And, you know, as legislators or council people or board members, we've all got a job to do, and I would like for all of us to get back to doing what we were appointed to do, and that is to have a better solid waste authority, to save landfill space. Our employees and staff sitting over there do a pretty difficult job. It's hard to have more than one boss. I've been through that when you have 9 or 12 and everyone has a bit of a different opinion, but at all of our ages here, I think we just need to get back to business and do the best we can. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Creech. Anybody else? I think that we have a very important job here, and, you know, the future of Horry County and the way that we handle garbage is critical, and there's a lot of decisions to be made, and I hope that we will continue to do what's in the best interest of the citizens. So, any other business for the board? New, old? And there's no need to go in executive session? No. Okay. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you very much, everybody.